It seems crazy for a day as avid suggestions to turn famous phobias into something was way better than I'd even anticipated. I mean, not only did I love making that video, but that first video of turning phobias into demons has done super well, especially considering it's not tied to any specific famous pop culture franchise, like a lot of my more popular videos normally are. So I've gone through the comments of that last video and taken a whole bunch of my favorite suggestions for more phobias to turn into demons, and that's what we're doing today. Another round. Super excited for this, so let's get into it, shall we? Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. At any moment, a demon could choose to seek out and torment anyone they so desire, but in many cases they'll only hunt down prey that holds within their mind a specific fear that the demon hungers for. One of these demons that is never short on potential victims is Hydrophobia. This demon preys on those with a fear of water, and more often than not, those with Thalassophobia, a fear of open water. While it is a very aquatic appearing creature with fins, tentacles, and a head like a blended shark and squid, the demon is well able to travel over land to seek out inland prey who stay well away from its ocean home. It can create an orb of water around itself, either by controlling the waters of the ocean or by expelling plumes of water from holes on its head and from beneath its tentacles. It can then hover that orb into the air, above the clouds even, to soar towards whatever target its fear sense leads it unto. When its prey is found, the demon will excrete more water to create another orb around the victim, making their head dip in and out of the water to keep them alive, but also give them the fear that they could drown at any moment. It will lift them into the air and fly them back to the ocean, where its torment will commence. If the victim does have the fear of open water, it will simply leave them and swim away, leaving the victim lost in the vast sea with nowhere to go for hours on end. The demon will loom in the depths, feeling the pulses of terror emanating from the prey before it swims back up to them, and intermittently will wrap them in its tentacles, pull them under, and when they're on the brink of drowning, release them and allow them to swim back to the surface, but only long enough to take a short breath before being pulled back down again and again and again. As is often the case, once the demon senses a sufficient level of terror in its victims, it will devour them with its dagger teeth, then slumber till its hunger awakens it again. Now I think this thing has one of the coolest creature heads I've ever drawn. I was going for a mix of a shark, a bit of an anglerfish, and a squid, and I guess there might be a bit more anglerfish in there from the teeth than shark. But even more so than all that, it kinda looks like a xenomorph, like it really has the alien sort of head shape. That wasn't an intention I was going for, but, you know, I'm cool with that. I really like the xenomorph design, and I think this turned out really cool too. I like the rest of the body as well, it's just the head is the part where I was like, ooh, this turned out really, really cool. Also, this one was originally supposed to be more hydrophobia, the fear of water, but really from writing that lore, I guess it ended up leaning more thalassophobia, although I, wrote it into the lore that it's a demon that can feed off people with both fear of water and fear of open water. Really happy with this design. I feel like I can really cut loose with these demon designs and just put in whatever weird elements I think look cool. I mean, I guess I can always kind of do that, but I don't know, I feel like I have more freedom with these creatures than I do with some other ones I design. Anyway, hope you all like the result. Let's take a look at the finished version. There is one demon that above most others is able to imbue fear and nausea in its victims without having to do much more than stand in their line of sight. It is a beast called Tripophobia, and it hunts down those with a strong aversion to the sight of irregular patterns of repeating holes, also referred to as Tripophobia. Even something as simple as a honeycomb can be deeply unpleasant to look at for someone with this phobia, so the sight of Tripophobia is nearly unbearable to them. When this demon senses someone's fear ignited, it will hunt them down and reveal itself when they're alone. To initiate further terror in them, the demon will lash out its whole speckled tongue and lick the victim's face, not only forcing them to feel the bumps of holes against their skin, but also poisoning them with its toxic lick that leaves them unable to close their eyes and nearly immobilized. Their muscles become so tight that they can barely walk, making it easy for the demon to circle around them and stay within their vision. As their victim quakes and has repeating panic attacks, putting them on the verge of heart failure, the demon will revel in how its appearance strikes terror into this poor being. If their fear takes even the slightest dip, the demon will then run its tongue along them again, slowly, over and over again. It will make the eyes hiding beneath its holes dart in every direction at random intervals, then all stare at the victim at once, before repeating the pattern. Finally, when its lust for fear is sated, it will wrap them up in its tongue and pull the victim's top half into its mouth. It won't devour them yet, however. It will simply roll them around in its mouth, further rubbing against the holes all over its gums to give them one last horrific jolt. Only then will it slurp the rest of them down, devouring them whole. Now, doing this one was gross. It was gross looking at the reference images, it was gross drawing it, it's gross looking at it now, it was gross doing the writing for it, but it was by far the most requested one, so I definitely knew I had to do a Tripophobia demon. And I was kind of excited to do it, and even though it was, the whole process was a bit gross, it was still like a fun kind of gross, where I'm like, ugh, this is gross, and still drawing it. I don't know if that really makes sense. I do really like how this one turned out. It was easy to detail it because obviously I was putting holes everywhere. I mean, not everywhere. I tried to space them out a little bit, so there was some contrast of areas with holes, some areas without holes. And the overall drawing, I think, actually looked kind of creepier and grosser when it was in the inking stage. The colors kind of smooth everything out a little bit, whereas it's obviously very high contrast, having the holes with very dark spots when it's just in black and white. I don't have Tripophobia specifically, but looking at some of the reference images on Google Images, there was some really nasty looking stuff that I did not want to look at for long when I was starting to draw this guy. Looked up some pictures, then was like, okay, I get the idea, put them away, and then got to drawing. One thing I will say for this guy though, which I mentioned how I thought the Arachibutyrophobia demon in the last episode was kinda cute looking, and a lot of people did not agree at all. This one, I think if you smoothed out all the holes, like just got rid of the holes on this one, then it would be cute looking. It would just be like a fun looking frog beast kind of thing. But with all the holes, definitely not cute. Anyway, hope you all like it or are grossed out by it or whatever you were hoping to get out of this drawing. Let's take a look. Now, as said previously, many demons have a myriad of potential victims to pull from. Demons such as Ophidaemon or Hydrothala could sate themselves on those with their fear cravings from even a small town for quite some time. Archibatrops doesn't have that same privilege. This demon has a very specific fear hunger. He craves to devour those with the fear of getting peanut butter stuck to the roof of your mouth. It's a very specific phobia, but a real one to be sure. Archibatrops manages to find a victim every 7 months or so, and will torment them by trapping them in a room and excreting peanut butter all over the walls and floor, from both its mouths, its hands, and the plumes of peanut butter on its back and legs. It will let the victims stew in their fear, surrounded by peanut butter, staring at them, unmoving, while it drips the spread from every orifice. Then, eventually, it will walk towards them slowly and force its hands into their mouths, leaving clumps of peanut butter so large that they can barely breathe, and will inevitably get it stuck to the roof of their mouth. It's not the most dangerous demon around, and there have been a few to survive its attacks. And, in fact, one young man even managed to, well, do more than survive. Chris Peterson had a strong fear of peanut butter since he was a child, and never went near the stuff, didn't even want to be in the room with someone when they were eating it. He could barely even remember where it started, simply that he'd gotten it stuck to his mouth as a toddler and cried for hours over it. When Archibatrop sought him out, Peterson was initially horrified, but when he got to the point of the demon thrusting peanut butter into his mouth, he suddenly realized that he absolutely loved the taste of peanut butter. The demon tried to reignite his fear, but nothing happened. Archibatrop soon began to leave, but Peterson started following the demon, taking bites out of its hands to get more of the delicious crunchy spread. Soon the demon was feeling the very fear it had meant to imbue the boy with. It tried to run on its tiny legs, but couldn't move fast, while the boy kept catching up and leaping on him to take more bites. Eventually, it got away by shooting a massive glob of peanut butter at Peterson to stick him to a tree so it could escape. But to this day, Peterson not only loves peanut butter and eats it every day for breakfast, and often for dessert mixed with chocolate chips, but he has dedicated his life to learning about demons and finding out how to hunt down Archibatrops so he can trap it and forever have an endless supply of his new favorite breakfast spread. Now, the drawing I was originally going to do next for this episode was Fear of Blood, and if I do a third episode in this series, I'm definitely going to do that because I've got some cool ideas for it. But when I posted the first teaser for this episode and saw this suggestion from Wahid Abdullah, and maybe a few other people have suggested this as well, this was just the first one that I noticed, I was just like, I've never heard of this fear, but that's too perfect, and I have to work it into this episode. Anyone who's new to the channel, I've a bunch of times just eaten spoonfuls of peanut butter and chocolate chips. It's a recurring reference. If you go back to old episodes, you'll find it somewhere. But yeah, I thought it was too perfect, and I thought it would be really funny. And like in the last episode where I worked in one story of someone overcoming their fear and escaping the demon, I want to make sure in each of these demon episodes to have one fun, goofy, or uplifting sort of story, because as much as I really like doing these episodes, the lore for these episodes is a lot more dour and depressing than a lot of my other episodes. I like having some uplifting stuff in there, so I figured this one would make for a good funny story. Not to mention the fact that I got to write in a character that's basically just supposed to be me. But anyway, let's take a look at how this demon turned out. Now, many would consider dogs to be one of the greatest, most loving and pleasant animals on the planet. I mean, obviously, they're often referred to as man's best friend, but there are also many with the polar opposite feeling. Fear of dogs is one of the most common phobias there is, which means that Cinephet is never short on victims. This demon stands on its hind legs at 12 feet tall, but is also able to shrink to half its size to run on all fours, making it look more similar to a Doberman Pit Bull blend. In this form, it will often travel in forests near small towns, and purposely run by hikers to see if a sufficient fear is mobilized in their minds. When a victim gives the reaction they lust for, they'll herd the person deeper into the woods by sprinting around them, still in their smaller form, to force the victim farther and farther from safety and any possible help. Once it's lured them deep enough, it will start to grow and shift. Its eyes will glow green, and its bones and veins will become more pronounced as it lurches back on its hind legs to stand at its full height. It will then let out a deafening howl that lures all dogs within 10 miles to its location. They'll all arrive in a hypnotized state and encircle the victim. They'll consistently bark at the person viciously, then they'll take turns darting in and biting at the victim, tearing into their legs to ensure they can no longer run. It will then make the dogs cease their attack for short periods to strike more fear of the unknown into the victim before allowing the dogs to attack again. Eventually, it will stop the attacks and open a gap in the entrapment of dogs, giving the person a way out. If they can summon the courage, they'll limp off and usually get about 50 meters away before Cinephet howls and sends all the dogs charging after the prey. This time, when the person is caught, the dogs will devour them. Cinephet doesn't even need to feast on the flesh itself. The demon simply craves the fear, which nourishes it like sunlight would a rose. It will then turn back to its smaller form and charge off to another town to slumber before its next meal. Now with this demon, I really wanted to use green as the pop of color for it. I talked in the last episode about how with every demon I wanted to make them mostly gray and black with one specific pop of color that's thrown in to make them a little bit more interesting and let them all be a little bit different looking from each other, although I have repeated some colors a few times now. But with this one, I didn't really know why green was the color I wanted to go with. I just thought it was going to work really well, and then when I was halfway through the coloring stage, I realized, oh yeah, that's because this thing basically just looks like Benwolf from Ben 10. In fact, I was even going to give this thing a double hinged jaw, which would have made it look way more like Benwolf. So I'm glad I didn't add the jaw thing, and I don't think it looks too similar. There definitely are a lot of similarities, but I think this thing's unique enough on its own, although maybe if I look at some images of Benwolf again, I'll probably think, oh yeah, no, actually, they are really, really similar. But oh well, I'm still super happy with how this one turned out. I especially like how the mouth turned out, just the big grin that keeps going back and back and back. I've done that on a few of these demons, and I think just the big creepy grin really adds to the demonic sort of look. When the demon looks happy, I think it's just that much creepier. Also, one thing that I really liked in this drawing is that I made it feel like it had a little bit of movement right near the beginning of the coloring stage by just adding the little swoop of blood near its mouth that makes it look like it's turning its head. Just adding that little touch gave the piece a bit of movement that wouldn't have been there if I hadn't put it in. Anyway, I think this is a good one to end the video on, so let's take a look at the finished result. I am super happy with how the second episode came together. I can't decide for sure which one I like better, the first episode or second. There's definitely lots of art in both that I really liked. Also excited to expand more on this narrator and this possible world for multiverse tales, tying it in with my other characters, and I'd love to get some more suggestions from all of you for what other kinds of stuff I could fit into this world. Obviously, I could do some more stuff with demons. I actually considered doing famous DC characters as demons for today, because tomorrow is the big DC fandom event where they're releasing a bunch of new trailers and stuff. But there were so many great suggestions for phobias that I was just like, I think I gotta just jump right into another round of this. But yeah, give me more suggestions of what I could turn into demons or what I could turn phobias into. All that good stuff in the comments as usual. And of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure to check out the first episode in this series, Famous Phobias as Demons episode 1, or maybe the Pokemon as SCPs videos. Those are very similar tone-wise in terms of art and narration. Oh, and by the way, the fact that there's a Marvel vs. Capcom arcade machine behind me, I will work that into a video at some time in the near future. I'm very excited about having it. I think it could give me some cool prompts for episodes, but it didn't really fit in with the spooky episodes I'm doing this month. Though I guess not every video I do this month will necessarily be horror related, but I don't know, we'll see. But besides that, that's all for today. I'm Christian Pearson. This has been PopCross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.